Hi guys, so at the beginning of 2020 in January I decided that I was going to film a reading vlog where I documented my reading for the first week of the year. Obviously I haven't previously uploaded that video, so you haven't seen it. One, because it was getting very long, I didn't really see the point in it. Two, I finished it halfway through, so I wasn't really sure what use that video would be, but there was always something that was stopping me from deleting the footage. And when I have put it into my computer and started editing it, there's a lot there that I would really love to share with you. So I thought that what I would do is create this preface to explain some of the context behind the video, and then I would let you watch it, and then I will come back at the end and I will finish off my thoughts on the book that I was reading, which was The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. And so then you would still get the whole vlog, you would get to see it, and I really want to talk more about this book. So it gives me the perfect opportunity. So I really hope you enjoy this vlog, and I'm looking forward to sharing it finally with you. Hi guys, and welcome to my first reading vlog of 2020. It is currently New Year's Eve, the final day of December 2019, and I'm starting my 2020 reading. The end of December, those last few days, and then the beginning of January are always the worst time for me throughout the year for feeling insecure in my reading. So when it comes to January the 1st, the clock resets and I haven't read any books that year, and it kind of fills me with dread at the thought that I haven't read anything yet. So I like to get ahead and take the day before the new year starts to start my reading. Then I do feel like I'm ahead before I've even begun. So it is New Year's Eve. I'm going to start my first book of the year, which I'm so excited about. I've been waiting for about the last week to start the really good books I've been wanting to read for ages. And I'm also hosting the Classics-a-thon at the moment, which is part of my overall reading challenge this year, which is called the Classics Community 2020 Reading Challenge, which I know lots of you are joining in with. I will shut up about it at some point in the future, but if you would like more information on that, then it is in the description box below, where you can find my announcement video and also our Goodreads group. So I'm going to show you now what I'm hoping to read during the first week of the Classics-a-thon. And the first book that I'm about to start, I'm just so excited about this. It is The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. I am sure you will have heard me talk about Edith Wharton by now, because at the end of November I read The Age of Innocence and loved it. So I am really looking forward to reading this. I will say though that I was just scrolling through Instagram earlier. I saw a post that was about another Edith Wharton book that somebody had read, and in the description it was talking about how they preferred that book because they were comparing it to the ending of The House of Mirth and gave a huge spoiler away. And I wanted to cry, which I realised that this book has been out for 115 years. It was published in 1905, but I really didn't want the ending to be spoiled, so that has put a downer on it slightly, but I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to try and enjoy every second of reading this, and I think it will be the perfect book to start off the year with. And then after that I am hoping to read an E.M. Forster book. I have read now A Room with a View, Howard's End and Morris, and next I would like to read Where Angels Fear to Tread, which was E.M. Forster's first book. It's a relatively short one, and I do quite like to check in a few shorter books in January, just because then I also feel like I'm ahead. But really that's the only time of year when I just try to read quite a lot, so I do then for the rest of the year that don't have as much panic. So then once I've read Where Angels Fear to Tread, as part of our buddy read section on the Classics Community 2020 Reading Challenge Goodreads page, we are doing a read along of Henry James's The Portrait of a Lady. So a few of us are reading this throughout January, and then we're going to share our thoughts on the Goodreads page, so I'm really looking forward to that. I don't think I'm going to finish this one this week or within the next week, but I'm going to give it a good go because it is just under 700 pages, which is quite long, but I'm not too worried about that because I feel like the writing style might be my taste. It will be my first Henry James book, and I don't think it will be a bad place to start. I am looking forward to it, as I am with all of these books. I don't really know what to say about them because I haven't started them yet, but I will talk about all my thoughts as I am reading them and getting really into them. So those are the books that I am hoping to read over the next week. We'll see how it goes. I realise it is quite ambitious, but I am up for the ambition. I am raring to go with my reading, and I am about to start now The House of Mirth. I love Edith Wharton, and I'm hoping that that doesn't change when I am reading The House of Mirth. I think that it is going to be a bit more dramatic than The Age of Innocence, which in itself is quite dramatic, so I'm interested to see what that will be like. And this is another one that is set in New York society, I think at the turn of the century, and it's about a young woman's fight for freedom and independence and the scandal that causes. So I can't even, I'm just going to say how much I am excited to read it because I can't even put into words how excited I am to begin it. So I'm not going to put it into words. I'm just going to begin this book and update you once I have read some more. I don't really have any New Year's traditions as such because historically New Year's Eve hasn't been one of my favourite days, but something that I decided to do last year in the early hours of the new year was to write a letter to myself that I could write a year later and look back at my thoughts on the year and my feelings towards the year ahead. So I just retrieved it from my writing desk, and it was very special and bittersweet in some ways to see how hopeful I was in some places and to see that hope come into fruition, but also to see where I was hopeful and those things weren't as positive. So it was really interesting, and I took inspiration from the Brontes in doing so, which is where the phrase "if all be well" comes from, because Emily and Anne Bronte wrote diary papers that they would write on their birthdays and then open a few years later. So I didn't want to wait 3 or 4 years. I thought I would just wait a year, and in the course of the year I forgot that I wrote it. And so to open it back up and see the things that have changed and haven't changed, it was really special and something that I'm hoping to still continue. So that's something that I will probably be doing again tonight after the clock strikes midnight, and I can write a note to myself reflecting on the year that's gone. And I don't tend to make resolutions because I remember making New Year's resolutions when I was younger and just feeling very despondent when I didn't reach them, and I can still feel that sense of despondency at those goals that I never reached. But I think that it is a nice thing to do. But you didn't come here for that, you came here for a reading update. And you may have seen in one of the previous clips that I was writing in this notebook. This is a notebook that I got from Etsy years and years ago. It has the Sylvia Plath quotation on it, I write only because there is a voice within me that will not be still. And I dug this out a week or two ago actually, because I had written a few notes in it and I thought I would bring it back, because what I put in here is words that I haven't known and I stumble across and really love, and I write the word and the definition so that when it comes to my own writing I can flick through this and think about the best words. It's like my own personal dictionary. So as I've been reading The House of Mirth, I have been making notes of words that I didn't know or wasn't aware of or don't really use, one of which was inculcate, which means to instill an idea, attitude or habit by persistent instruction, and I really love the sound of it. And I've also been making notes of quotations that I like, because I didn't want to annotate as I was going along. I wanted something that I could look back on with specific notes. So I made a note of the quotation, "She was so evidently the victim of the civilization which had produced her that the links of her bracelet seemed like manacles chaining her to her fate," which was quite relevant to some thoughts I've been having recently about my own writing and something that I wanted to play around with in my writing. So I thought that was a great quotation to write down. I am so far just under 50 pages into The House of Mirth and it feels like coming home. There is something so warm about Edith Wharton's writing, something that draws you in and makes you want to lean in closer and to pay attention to all the tiny details of this world that she creates. On the surface, she creates an incredible story with these fantastic characters, but there is always a deeper level to her writing that I really appreciate. And the main character in this is a woman called Lily Bart, who is 29 years old, and that means that in the society she lives in, New York, around the turn of the 20th century, she should have been married or should be thinking very swiftly about getting married. So she's almost running out of time, but she is opposed to marriage. She doesn't want to be married. She wants independence without having to gain that by marrying, but also then losing that independence once she has married. So really she is in this lose-lose situation, and you can really feel her frustration. At times I think she can herself be quite a frustrating character, but that's what I like about it, because when you read books sometimes, particularly I think when I was reading a lot of YA, which I think is written purposely that way, and I myself would write it that way as an author of YA novels, I feel like there is this expectation that you have to like the characters, you have to be able to relate to them. And I think with other novels as well, there is an expectation that to like a book, you should have to relate in some ways to the characters. But I find it quite difficult to relate to Edith Wharton's characters. I find that I don't want to relate to them. The fascination is how different their lives are to my own, and that for me is why I love her writing so much, because she takes me there. She makes me believe it, even though my life now in 21st century England is so very different. I won't spoil the book for you, but I will talk a little bit more about the first chapter because I think it sets the scene really well. So it starts with a man called Lawrence Selden who sees Lily on a train platform, and they get talking and she wants to go somewhere for fresh air. So they end up, after walking the streets of New York, at Lawrence's house. Now it's very clear, even at this early point in the book, that Lily is on a quest for her freedom and she wants this different life for herself, but she doesn't want to be like Lawrence's cousin, who is independent and yet doesn't seem to fit the standards of independence that Lily wants. She thinks very highly of herself but doesn't have much money, and in this scene we see her crossing the threshold of Lawrence Selden's home, going to have tea with him in his home, in the rooms that he inhabits. And this is seen as something that shouldn't be allowed, but because of Lily and this desire to be different, even though she is constrained by the society that she lives in, it is pretty powerful, and I think that it really does set the tone for the rest of the book. We see that Lily is dissatisfied with the way that she is living, and I think the draw of this book is seeing how that will manifest as it progresses. So I am loving it, like really loving it. Maybe equal to The Age of Innocence. I feel like I prefer the opening of The Age of Innocence to this, but I think they're very different books but still have that classic Edith Wharton feel. I feel like it is a new obsession, and I'm really sorry for any of you who are already bored with me talking about Edith Wharton. This isn't going to be the last of her books that I read this year. I already know I want to read so much more, and I probably won't get loads more of this read tonight, but I'm happy with that. I'm going to take it easy and savour every single beautiful word. It is Friday the 3rd of January, and I haven't updated you for the past few days because on the 1st of January I spent the whole day reading, and then on the 2nd I didn't spend a lot of time reading, so it just kind of worked out that I haven't updated you until now. But it is for a good reason, because I am really loving The House of Mirth. I am around 150 pages in, and I didn't update you before then because I found that it took me the first maybe 120 pages even to really get going with it. It's not a slow start exactly, but it introduces everything in those first between 100 and 120-ish pages. So you're really getting to know the characters, the setup, the world that those characters inhabit, and how that shapes their behaviour. And so then once you get to around that 120 page mark, things start happening, the plot kicks in, and we see this downward spiral for the main character Lily, who in some ways I am struggling to empathise with, but in other ways I really get her. You get a really intimate look inside her head and what is going through her mind, and really the book is about Lily making these decisions but them turning out poorly, or not making the decisions quickly enough, or making mistakes in the decisions that she is making. And so even though she sets her mind on the right path, for some reason she's always led down the wrong path. And I really like that, because Lily is not one of the most privileged people in this set. She is orphaned and she doesn't have a lot of money of her own, and so a lot of the language in the book, the semantic field really of the book, is about money and speculation and about gathering wealth, and that's something that Lily strives for either through marriage or through independent means. That ultimately is the thing that leads her to her downfall, this reliance on money. So I was thinking a lot this morning about the new woman. This was a thing that was coming around in the 1880s and 90s, and this was published in 1905, but a lot of the ideas in it surround the idea of the new woman, which is about a woman, typically like a middle class or upper class woman, who finds means of independence. And in fiction this meant that there were more women, and men too, writing about heroines who were more conscious of their sexuality, who were more conscious about the ideas around marriage and how that could be lethal for some people, how it shouldn't be necessary to marry. And really it was one of the first waves of feminism. So it has many things that you can critique about it, you can criticise, but I think it's a really interesting time for literature. So I have been reading up about the new woman and this craze for the new woman around the end of the Victorian period, and this led me down a real rabbit hole, which is what I always love. So I found a website, and I use a website a lot, called the Victorian Web, and I was able to find an article talking about the new woman on there and mentioning lots of the authors. And so what I did was look at the primary sources, and I found this whole list of books about the new woman. And I thought that because it's a new year, I would talk a little bit about archive.org, which is what I have been using recently to access books that might be out of print or are very hard to find. So this morning I went online, I used my phone, and I went on archive.org and was looking at lots of different authors and lots of different books that I wanted to read but I could not find anywhere. So I just use iBooks on my phone. I go onto archive.org, search for the book or the title of the book or the author of the book that I want to read, and then I always download the PDF and then convert that PDF to iBooks on my phone. That's what I do. So this morning I got a book by George Egerton called Keynotes. George Egerton was a woman and that was her pen name. Can't remember off the top of my head what her actual name was, but I'll leave it in the description so you know. I bought a book called The Woman Who Did by Grant Allen. I got another one that I actually had to buy on the iBook store called Miss Blake of Monkshalton, which I have started reading and it's really good, and that's by Isabella Ormiston Ford. I got another one called Birds Through the Opera Glass, which isn't about the new woman, but it's just one I really wanted to read, which is by an American author called Florence Merriam Bailey, and she was writing about birds and women doing bird watching in the Victorian period in America, and that's something that I'm researching at the moment. And I got another book called, I think it's called The Story of a Modern Woman by Ella Hepworth Dixon. What I really like about these, even though they are ebooks, is that usually they are just printed versions of the book that have been uploaded in their original versions, so you get them in PDF and you can see the way they were actually written. So I know there will be some of you who want to read more classics this year, or who want to read classics that are slightly underrated. So archive.org is one of the best resources that I've been using at the moment. Project Gutenberg is also good, but between them they have everything that I need. So I'm hopefully going to read some more novels in the next few months starring the new woman, which I'm really looking forward to. I think reading Edith Wharton actually has made me think about that changing period between the 1880s and the 1900s, and even into the Edwardian period, when women were starting to become a bit more vocal, and even though they were vocal before, you start to have this wave where everybody is more conscious of the things going on and the issues facing women. So I think it's a really fascinating time, and not one that I have really tapped into before. I feel like my comfort is probably the 1840s and 50s, so it's nice to push myself out of my comfort zone, and reading something like The House of Mirth set in America, or reading stuff from a different time period, is really great. I was thinking actually, I think last night when I was thinking about The House of Mirth, that I feel like I've learned more about writing from Edith Wharton in the past few weeks since I've been reading her books than I have in the last 20 years. That might seem a bit silly to some of you who might have read Edith Wharton and don't think she's anything special, but I think she's incredibly special and such a talented writer, and there's something about her writing that allows me to really study it and to think about the techniques that she's using, to really think about the ways that she has written her books, that when I'm reading other stuff I don't always see. I'm really studying it as I'm reading, but it's also not taking a lot of effort to do so. I would have probably finished it by now, but I think yesterday I was feeling that I had read too much of it on the 1st of the month and at the end of December, and I felt like I was going too fast with it and I wasn't enjoying it as much because of that. But if I take my time now, then I'll get so much more out of it, and I really do feel like I'm getting towards the second part of the book. So it is set into book 1 and book 2, and I'm getting towards the middle, which is book 2, and I feel like there really is going to be that downward spiral now. There aren't many typical tragic elements, but there is an impending sense of doom in this book, which I do like. You see that heighten as the book progresses. You see Lily at the start of the book and then you see her change. I really like that change, and I really like seeing that change. I was spoiled for the ending, so I know how it's going to end, but I don't know how it's going to end. I just know the event that it ends with. So actually I feel like now I've read more of the book, I'm not too upset that I know that spoiler, even though I was when I found out, but I do feel slightly hesitant to go on because I'm quite happy with it being the way that it is at the start of the book. I don't really want to see it all turn bad. I don't really want to see all the dramatic things happen, which are of course going to happen because you don't have a story or a good story without some kind of drama going on in between. So we will see what happens. I'm going to read a bit more now and then probably read more tonight. I am really loving it, but there's also something about it that makes me want to cover my eyes and think I don't want to read anymore, because I think it's just the way that Edith Wharton has written it. She kind of lulls you in, not in a false sense of security, but you feel relatively secure, and it's an Edith Wharton book. so you know that that's only going to be limited to so long. I'm loving it. I'm really looking forward to reading the rest. I just want it to stay perfect in my eyes. So it is Saturday and I'm having a pretty lazy day today. I am just feeling a bit fed up, a bit anxious, and just like I'm not in the mood to do much. I got my edits back for my book yesterday, so I've officially started work again, and I did a lot of work last night, so I am going to do some more work later, but I'm going to have the rest of my time today to read and do whatever I like. So I'm still reading The House of Mirth, which I'm still loving, but I'm finding it a real struggle to get through. Don't know if that's just me, but I am on page 174, chapter 14. I am so close now to getting to the second part, book 2. So that might be my goal to finish this today. Finding it slow, like it's not the writing that's slow, it's just me and wanting to absorb everything that's going on. And that's why I'm finding it so slow to get through. Like, I could read this so much quicker, and it's not that I want to read it quicker, because I do. It's not for any other reason other than that I'm enjoying it that I want to read it quicker, but it's just taking me ages because I'm just trying to absorb every little thing, every sentence, and it's kind of frustrating because on one hand I really want to read it because I want to find out what happens in the story, and on the other hand I am just kind of enjoying luxuriating in it, so it's kind of frustrating. 2 books that arrived in the post today. I'm trying to be good with book post, but I got this one. This is Sketches by Boz by Charles Dickens, which I kind of stumbled across online and really liked, so I thought I would get a physical copy. I have a hard time with Charles Dickens in general. That's such a stupid thing to say that I didn't even realise I said, because he wrote a book called Hard Times, but I do generally have a hard time reading his books. I like some of them, like Great Expectations, others I just don't like. So I have read some of this and really liked it, and it is inspired by real life and it is about London during the time that Charles Dickens was writing, so I think that would be really good. And then I am probably going to do a classics book haul next month, but I also got a copy of The Glimpses of the Moon by Edith Wharton because I'm just so in love with her at the moment. This is one of the Virago modern classics, and they've got these nice green spines which I really like, and I can't wait to read this because it's basically about a man and a woman who get married because neither of them particularly want to get married, so they marry each other and say that they're going to live on the marriage funds that people give them, and so they will then be married until those wedding funds run out. So it sounds really good, and I think it might be the next Edith Wharton that I read. I'm hoping that it won't be too sad, but it probably will. It's Edith Wharton we're talking about. I also really love this cover, and on the back it says it's from The Black Hat 1904 by Frank W. Benson, so that's nice. I like these classic covers with really great artwork on the front, so got those 2 today. But now we're back to The House of Mirth, and yeah, we'll see what I think of it. We'll see if I can read any more today. I might just cut my losses today and read some poetry instead. It is me again, present day Lucy. I'm filming this at the beginning of March, so it's been a while since I finished reading The House of Mirth, but I did finish reading it. I think that this is possibly my favourite classic that I have read so far this year. As I have talked about a lot during this video, I love Edith Wharton, and this did make me love her just as much, maybe even more than I already did. It's really nice to read her books. I feel like I get so much out of them and really appreciate the writing, and The House of Mirth was no different in that. So one of the things that happened a lot as I was reading The House of Mirth is that I did find it quite slow. In the end I did get to the second part, book 2, and I don't think I enjoyed that as much as the first part of the book. There were things that I felt like I wasn't sure why she was taking the story in that direction, but then once we got onto the last part of the second part, that for me was when everything in the book joined together and I kind of realised, whoa, this is why I love this book. I knew what happened, I was spoiled, but it didn't matter in the end because it was all about the execution in this book. It was about how Edith Wharton told that story and told the events. It wasn't about what happened, it really was about how it happened and the way that Edith Wharton lets it unfold and how she takes you into a different part of New York, shows you a different side to the people that lived there, a less privileged side, and she throws Lily Bart into this world, and so you kind of get to see a much bigger picture to this society. I won't spoil the ending because I'm sure there's lots of you who will want to read the book after watching this video, or if you have heard of it before, but I will say that I cried. I finished it and there were tears streaming down my face, and I had one of those moments where you just kind of sit back and are like, what just happened? I was kind of numb after reading it because I knew it was going to happen, but still I couldn't believe it. And no spoilers, I'm absolutely not spoiling anything, but I will say that at the heart of every Edith Wharton book there is emotion, and I think she takes you on that emotional journey. So when you get to the end, you finally get hit by all the emotions that you have been feeling at once during the course of the book. My saying when it comes to Edith Wharton is that she doesn't give you the ending you want, but the ending you need, and this book is proof of that. I'm not sure if I enjoyed it as much as The Age of Innocence. I feel like there's a reason that The Age of Innocence won the Pulitzer and was so brilliant, but I will say that The House of Mirth leads you up very nicely to that point in Edith Wharton's writing. You can really see how writing The House of Mirth led her to the conclusions she makes in The Age of Innocence, and it was quite nice to read such a rounded book like The Age of Innocence and then read something like The House of Mirth, which wasn't as perfectly executed but was still really fantastic. The House of Mirth is about the choices we make and whether they are the right decisions or the wrong decisions, and how those decisions can shape the rest of our lives. And within that, Edith Wharton is also very clear that the decisions we make are influenced by external sources, by the people around us, by what we think that we should be doing rather than thinking about what is right. And I think that that kind of makes this book morally grey. I feel like you can't really say if Edith Wharton is saying that this is the right course or the wrong course. I don't really think that any of the characters particularly have our sympathy in the book, and I also think that this is kind of where Edith Wharton goes wrong, in that some of her characters are painted less favourably than others, and usually that's because of things like their race or their religion, and I don't really feel like Edith Wharton redeemed herself in that sense. So there is a character in the book who is Jewish and he is seen as less favourably, and that was kind of one of the things that put a bad taste in my mouth. I feel like that can't be excused because as a modern reader I realised that is something that you just shouldn't do as a writer, but I also realised that that is because of the society that Edith Wharton has been brought up in. So that is one of the things that I wanted to mention, because as you're reading, that was just one of the things that I was like, really, Edith? Like, come on. But at the same time, every book is a product of its time, and that's also something that needs to be acknowledged. Some of the other characters definitely do have redemption arcs, but in some she pushes it further than others. So that's also another thing to consider as you're reading it. Who does get the redemption story, and who at the end of the book is left as a character who you have no sympathy with, who you feel like they are still an immoral person, or maybe not immoral, but is one of the characters who has such a detrimental effect to Lily that you can't see them in a favourable light. For me, the high point of any Edith Wharton book is the writing. Writing and writing style is the fundamental part of every book, but not every writer is good at it. Some writers are good at the writing, some are good at characterisation, some are good at world building, and I feel like Edith Wharton brings that all together and gets the fundamentals right, so that you can enjoy this book even if there are faults in the plotting or the pacing. I feel like the pacing probably was the issue with this book, but I say this as someone who is kind of reflecting on the experience, and as I was reading it, I definitely loved this book, and I think that it is amazing. These are kind of my criticisms because I do feel like it's important to wrap that up as I talk about it, but I just loved this book so much and would highly recommend it. I do think I enjoyed The Age of Innocence more, but that definitely didn't affect the way that I felt about The House of Mirth. I feel like if anything, loving The Age of Innocence as I did made me love The House of Mirth more, because I know what Edith Wharton is capable of. I know how much potential was in the writing, so that kept me reading. If you are new to Edith Wharton's writing, I would recommend starting with this. I think you could start with either, and I'm going to be reading more Edith Wharton now for sure, definitely this year. I've actually been reading some of her short stories this weekend, which I have really loved. I think she has such a way with words that no matter what she's writing, you are going to love it. So that was my reading vlog. I am so pleased that you finally got to watch it, and I hope you've enjoyed it and it hasn't felt too disjointed. I just thought that this was the best way of doing it, and I really wanted to share some of my thoughts on the book. So I hope you have enjoyed it, and I will see you guys soon. Happy reading!